George Bayruthi from FS Securities, a stockbroking firm on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. And every Monday morning I go through what happened globally around the world and try to forecast what we may see these coming weeks. I'll show you what is hot, what is not, what you should hold and what you should fold. And by the way, if you like the presentation, please give us some feedback. Over the full week and from around the globe, we start with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is an index which makes up the top 30 US stocks, which had a weekly rise of 0.6%, 176 points. However, when you consider the 2 weeks together, we find that the rise is not as spectacular, which means the week before last wasn't as good. It was obviously a loss. So 175 points last week, but only 46 points over 2 weeks. The same thing with the Nasdaq 100, which is the technology index. Over the last 2 weeks, 1.46%, with a nice rise last week. The index, the 500 index, which is the broader index, which incorporates the 500 top stocks on the Dow, actually was only 0.6% over the last 2 weeks. The US dollar, you can see, is starting to gain strength. And the Australian dollar, on the other hand, was actually starting to show some weakness. Gold over the last 2 weeks was actually only up $1.70, despite the major rise of $9 last week. Silver was 17 cents over the last 2 weeks. All of it, or most of it, the rise happened last week with 15 cents, taking the silver price per ounce, US per ounce, to $17.11. Now, if you're interested in the other commodities, all you have to do is talk to us and tell you how you can trade wheat, soybeans, corn, etc. Again, the mechanical system that we have designed tells us that on our market, the ASX 200, which is our market gauge, that is actually, it's made up extensively by two major substantial sectors, the financial and the materials. You can see here that last week the financial was up 0.7% and the materials was up 1.9%. The material has been good over 2 weeks. However, financials over the last 2 weeks we've seen major drop based on what happened to Westpac on the money laundering issue. Over the last 2 weeks, the financial was down 2.3%, and our market gauge was only up by 0.7% over 2 weeks. Looking at all the stocks going down the line, BHP was up 2.8%, and over the last 2 weeks, 2.6%. Again, that gives you a perspective what happened last week, and when you put last week in combination with the full 2 weeks together, you can have an understanding about the trend. The best sector here, the best stock, we can see that Worley and Telstra, both of these stocks had very good major rise the last 2 weeks. Telstra 7.2 over 2 weeks, 8.43% over last week. And again, Worley 7.8% last week, combining the 2 weeks together, 6.1%. If you look at all the stocks, you can see the average over the last 2 weeks was down 1%. Again, that gives you a good understanding about how the market is trending. Looking at volume, which of course is a very leading indicator, volume on Friday was higher than Thursday, but then you can see that on Tuesday the market was really high up in percentage, in rise, volume. And you can see Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the advances were well above the declines. Friday went the other way, where the declines were slightly above the advances. Now, when you look at the advances over declines for the whole week, you can see here last week we had a major bullish week where the advances well exceeded the declines. So we had a good week last week. How would that translate to what happened this week? Well, the indicators are showing that the market is likely to open this morning slightly higher. The mechanical system that we have tells us that again the American market is likely to continue to be strongly bullish. Gold gone from bearish to neutral, so that's actually perhaps a change in the direction, and so is silver. Crude oil, on the other hand, went from bullish to bear for the conservative trader, aggressive trader, and very aggressive trader. Looking at the chart, we can see that the Dow last Christmas went down quite a bit. We had a major drop in December, and since then it major recovered, and in actual fact at the moment it's sitting at all-time high. That is actually a record high for the Dow. And by the way, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, the other two indices, are actually also at all-time high. Well, despite that very nice trend, Friday, as a matter of interest, was actually a red candle, indicating that was actually a drop in the market on Saturday morning. Our mechanical system tells us that all sectors were bullish last week with the exception of the financial and gold. So we might actually take these indicators and try to more or less try to forecast what will likely to happen to all these sectors. So according to this, for the aggressive trader and very aggressive trader, we continue to be bearish, and so is for gold. Looking at our chart, again, in Christmas time, we've seen a major drop in our market. We had a major recovery, and several months ago, we've seen a decline, but then we all recovered that decline, and at the moment, our market is sitting at all historical high. Again, we followed the American market on Friday, hitting the all-time high, and right at the end of the day, we've seen some profit taking and a decline in the market. Looking at the stocks, we've got here, this is actually the weekly. This morning we see that ANZ continues to be bearish, BHP continues to be bullish, Macquarie Bank bullish, NAB bearish, and QBE bearish, and Westpac of course bearish again. Telstra is showing a very strong bullish, and we will see what happens this morning when Telstra opens. Again, finally, we want to tell you what happened to our position for CFDs. What I show you here, all the trades that we have at the moment: LSA, Appen, the Pound, Grain Corp, Karoon, Qantas, Treasury Wine, and Virgin. These are all our current open position, and this morning LSA is trading higher up. We're making $115 profit. The British Pound and Appen continue to be our bad trade so far, but I'm expecting that Appen may be recovering based on some fundamental results. I'm also expecting that because of the strength in the US dollar, that we might see a decline in the British Pound against the US dollar. We're making $50 profit on Qantas, and we continue to make small profit on Virgin Money. Treasury Wines, small loss. Overall, by the way, guys, we out of $4,000 injection capital, at the moment we're sitting on $5,116 in capital value. That is actually puts us to 28% profit in just 5 months. Finally, the disclaimer: we don't know your financial circumstances, so before you take any action, please talk to us or talk to your professional advisor. There is absolutely no guarantee that everything we say is going to turn gold, as all our advice is of general advice only, and be careful before you trade. If you want to ask us any questions, all you have to do is write to me, george@fssecurities.com.au. If you're ringing from overseas, you can call me on my mobile, 61 for the country code. You don't need the 0, 61 411 259526. Happy trading and happy week.